Hello, this is Tim Figley along with my friend Mark Lamoncha, and we're providing a video to you because yesterday we were presenting and our audio didn't work like we would have hoped. And we heard some feedback that some of you wanted to get this video or get the PowerPoint presentation, and we wanted to provide something to you that we weren't able to provide yesterday. So this is our shot at recording it for you so you have a video takeaway from our presentation on transforming your workplace into a performance center. So I'm here with Hometown CEO, inventor, author, and community leader, Mark Lamoncha, and we have a special presentation on a case study from his company, Hometown Products, on what they've done to transform their workplace into a performance center and how we collectively have turned it into a book that you're going to have access to when we're done with this recording.
Thank you, Tim. I'm really excited that we're able to give you this takeaway so that you can play it over again in case there were some very important points that you wanted to implement in your workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. We think this is going to be a great value to everyone there. So we're going to open just like we would have if we were at the seminar in Jamaica with you. So our first question to you is, what if you could transform your workplace to create higher performance and better leadership results with your leaders, greater team member engagement, and a healthier, happier work culture? Well, that's exactly what Mark has done, and that's exactly what you can do. And I'm going to direct your attention to our screen and ask you a question. And when we ask a question, we've given you handouts. And every time you see this handout, you're going to be able to write down what you want to write down on the handout for your edification and for value for you. So, question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with your company's performance? So 10 would be, we're very satisfied, we're performing it the way we want to. 1 would be, we're not performing at all the way we want to, and then anything in between. Write that down on your handout or on your phone or wherever you're at. Number 2, how satisfied are you with your team members' engagement level? How engaged are the team members that you're leading right now? Are they fully engaged? That'd be a 10. And if they're disconnected in some way, shape, or form, that would be a 1 or somewhere in between. Third question, how satisfied are you with your team's leadership effectiveness? So your managers, your coaches, your supervisors, whatever you call them, how effective are they at communicating, at getting the message across, and at getting action taken from every one of the team members? And then finally, how satisfied are you with your organizational culture? And if that's a hard one to measure, think about it as how much trust do we have amongst each other to communicate and work together? And we ask these questions because we're going to talk to you today about 4 shifts. And the book that we've written and what Mark has done at Hometown created 4 shifts. The first shift to create higher company performance was transforming the workplace to a performance center, just like you would see on an athletic field or an athletic center. Secondly, to create team member engagement, it was to transform their employees to industrial athletes. These are people that come in to the workplace or the performance center and they perform just like an athlete would on that playing field. To create greater leadership effectiveness, they transformed their bosses or a boss mindset to a coaching mindset and skill set. And finally, to improve their organizational culture, they went from a tug of war where people were battling with one another to a win-win culture. And this is something that you can do as well. So you're looking at 4 shifts. And I'm going to ask you that next question for your worksheet in your handout. Which shift that I just talked about, which one of the 4, based on your responses a moment ago, would be the most important for you to focus on? Now we're here with Mark, and the reason why we're here with Mark is Hometown's a great case study, right? They've won the 2020 Manufacturer of the Year Award in the United States. So you can imagine all the manufacturers in the United States. Hometown was the 2020 Manufacturer of the Year because of the work they've done to transform their workplace into a performance center. And this was through talent management, engineering, production technology, and we're going to talk about some of the things they've done to get there before. But that created a lot of, I guess, curiosity and engagement from institutes such as MIT and the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany and several others, along with the Wall Street Journal and CNBC that featured articles on what Hometown was doing. And so it's created a lot of attention and it's created a lot of impact in our world here in the United States. And it wasn't always that way, Mark. Why don't you start to tell your story from the beginning and what you did to improve?
Well, like many companies, just riding on the seas, of general operations up until 2008, when we were coming up into the 2009, the Great Recession that went on. We were doing things pretty much the way a lot of other companies did, even from the Industrial Revolution, with, managing and, their employees. The way we see them was pretty much the way most of the world did. And it wasn't until my eyes were opened with hitting that financial, I call it the COVID of financial disaster, that only pretty much the U.S. only was feeling right then, is that we went from 220 people, down to 17. With only 3 of those being in production, and it was the worst. It was the worst turnaround that was in front of me. So much so that I had to break it down. I went to our, Youngstown State University. They have a small business development center that are many places around the globe, but this one in particular, I said, I can't fix it if I can't see it. So basically, they broke it down to show me that the projection would have been minus 35% net worth. We wouldn't have survived. We would have capsized, and fear was near. So one more breakdown was to actually go to the bankruptcy attorney and take these numbers and look at them. And I had a defining divine moment at that point in time where I realized that I needed to start looking at the people that were in, with us, not as employees, but as something different. I didn't quite know what it was yet, but I knew that, I was there for them, and, if they lost their jobs, they would lose their homes, and it just reconstituted me into, anchoring myself and saying, we're going to get through this. We're going to win it. We're not going to be capsized by the perfect storm. So, my father had said at one point in time, like many, you'll see some people in a business where they're standing around or working slow. And my father had said, if an employee only knew how much a minute was worth, maybe they would respond differently or work faster or work more focused. But I felt if there was some way that people could see how much a minute was worth to them, in real time, visually with a scoreboard, then they would be able to, improve their method of manufacturing and their efficiencies, and that would in turn lower our operating costs and keep us in business.
Yeah, and so this is where we go now from that first shift that I mentioned at the very beginning, where you can transform your workplace to a performance center. That's exactly what Mark is embarking on now. And there's some elements that I'm going to show you. Everything on your screen are the differences that we've defined from workplace to performance center. I'm going to highlight just a couple. So number one is a workplace is work-driven, and it's often chaotic, right? It's unclear what to do. We have 1,000 things to do, but performance center, what defines it is it's clear. It provides clarity on what to do and how to do it. Number two, it's not just work-driven or activity and task-driven, but it's performance-driven. We know what we need to do to succeed. And the last one I'll highlight here is it's not just that every moment is focused on production for 8 hours a day and we're wore out, but like any athletic competition, there's game time, so we're performing high. There might be a time of training, there might be timeouts, so that everybody can perform at the highest levels. Now, in sharing that with you, we've also identified 4 breakdowns in performance. And that's from Harris Interactive and Franklin Covey, when they surveyed nearly 13,000 people from 500 different international companies across 17 different industry groups, and found this. Number one, only 15% of the people could tell you what their goals actually were. Number two, only 48% of them said their team goals are translated into individual goals, so that those goals were actually meaningful to them. Number three, only 12% could tell you how they measured success. And number four, only 41% said their team would report out on how they were doing on the goals. Well, the key to all this is really a scoreboard. So we see there Usain Bolt from Jamaica, and we know he's the fastest person in the world based on a scoreboard. And we know that a scoreboard is really what attracts people, right? It engages us. And so we're going to talk to you about how you can transform your workplace into a performance center with an easy to remember acronym that you can actually apply today. The first thing is G for game. G means goal clarity. Do you have clear-cut goals? Number two, do you have clear actions or activities that tie in to those goals that people know they can do? Number three, do you have a clear way of measuring and a visible scoreboard? Just like Usain Bolt, like we're watching that scoreboard, do you have that measurable scoreboard? And number four, do you have an evaluation calendar, a time to check in to see how you're doing and provide continuous improvement? Now, we're going to talk to you about manufacturing and what Mark did, but just to show you that it doesn't have to be just manufacturing, it can be in any industry. I put a nonprofit here in our local region that actually does something similar, right? They have goal clarity. They want to achieve legalization of children into their homes for adoption. And they have clear action steps. Number two, you can see there. They measure their scoreboard. So we've turned it into something measurable, and then we evaluate. In this case, you can see every month. All right, so now I ask you. This is where I turn it to you. You can see the handout on the top of the screen, and you can know now, go to your handout. And it's a yes or no. Very easy. Are your goals crystal clear for the people that need to know the goals? Number two, do you have clear action steps that tie into those goals that will drive activity there? Number three, do you have a measurable scoreboard where they can measure what they're doing, see it in real time, which is a key, and it's visible to them? And number four, do you have an evaluation calendar or a time that you're going to check in? So check that out, decide for yourself, and score yourself on that one. Now, once we have transformed the workplace into a performance center using these tools we're giving you, we can now move to the next area, which is super significant, right? This is really what changed for you. And this was transforming the way we see people from an employee coming to work every day to an industrial athlete, right? Someone that now they're coming to perform. We're starting to value them a little bit differently. And just two areas here, I mean, you can see the entire screen, but two areas I'm going to focus on is employees oftentimes, because they are just work driven, as we noted before, they remain disengaged, right? They're not fully engaged. Whereas when you provide those four things we just mentioned, those industrial athletes now come and they are engaged, right? So now they're transitioning from working to performing. And so Mark, why don't we tell them a little bit of what you did and what your invention on how you were able to transform your workplace to a performance place.
So as we just talked about, we were at the bottom, of the curve, and we're down to that 3 people. And at that point in time, prior to this, I went to Lincoln Electric and I studied their annual incentive plan, and I realized that a few people are motivated by something that gets paid out once a year. But starting to see this more like a game, and taking the opportunity to all the work that I'd done with IT and data was how could we take and intersect real-time data, with the human mind, and how could we present a scoreboard where they would be able to be engaged. And part of this came when I was watching my sons play hockey, that there actually has to be some kind of a scoreboard, and I tied it all the way to in America for the Super Bowl. Like when you see how passionate and how painted and how full of just so much excitement, and then I wondered, well, what would happen if you actually followed each one of them home? Would they have that much enthusiasm and vigor, and be as excited about their job, or is it just a job, or is it really a career? Mm-hmm. So that's what you're looking at here, in my hobby of watching sci-fi movies and seeing the Matrix, where they were intersected, into the gaming with real time. That's the environment we've created now with the visual earnings, where actually we have the opportunity to algorithmically each cycle of our press for them to see their earning rate in real time. So say if it was 10 pieces an hour and they run 10 pieces an hour, it's $10 an hour. But if they run 40 pieces an hour, it will show the next cycle that their skills, abilities, and performance have improved them to that level. Then what they want to do when they log in on the top 10 list is you're looking at 483%. That's $48.30 an hour. Mm-hmm. They're doing the work of 4.8 people. And at 483%, they feel like that superhero, that super industrial athlete is coming out of them, and they're performing and not just being, paid. We actually, call it, basically a pay rate jail where you're stuck and you can't get out. We're giving them the key to their success and giving them the gamification for them to want to compete because they have that real-time goal in front of them.
Yeah. And so what we also were able to do then was start to measure through questions. There's some of their soft skills and are they engaged, not just are they engaged in that moment, but do they feel like someone cares about me? And do they feel like our opinion is valued? And do we understand the mission and purpose? And their scores are significantly higher here. As you can see, we measured their scores and they were at 4.38 out of 5. Right? So people are engaged in a lot of areas when they're engaged in one area. So now I'm going to go back to that handout, and I'm going to ask for you to look at this, what I'm going to call this Trust Performance Matrix. The Trust Performance Matrix is a way that you can quickly think about your industrial athletes, right? So an industrial athlete, I'm going to say, is on the top right. That's high performance. Right? You have to know how to measure performance, and high trust. So we can trust them, they're engaged, but there's 4 other quadrants here they could be in. They could be low performers and low trust. They could be high performers but low trust, which doesn't end up good either. So kind of look at this and decide which box your team members are in. Are they in box 1, 2, 3, or 4? So write that down, put a check mark, circle it, whatever you need to do to know, all right, this is what we need to do to move our industrial athletes up to the far right. All right, now we see this and we've moved from workplace to performance center, employee to industrial athlete. Now we're moving to the next one. And once people are engaged and they're high performers, there's high trust, high performance, no longer do we need to boss and push and prod around anymore. We can actually coach their potential because now they're motivated, right? Now you're tapping in to their motivation. And no longer do you have to control and contain with suspicion, but you can release their potential. No longer do you have to give as many orders, but you can listen, collaborate, trust that they have the best intentions as well, and that you can work collectively together. So, Mark, this was transformational for you when we talked about moving from one side of boss into that coach, because you saw them differently.
Yeah, the way I saw them, Tim, actually was the fact that they're not employees. They're actually my work family. You spend in normal operations 8 hours a day with each other, and first of all, it's how I see them.
Right.
And if I see them differently, and we learn to love each other from the inside out, and I realize that instead of the corporate structure, the corporate pyramid, that you are the most amazing innovation that will ever be on earth. Nobody ever created anything better than you. And when I started to realize that, then I realized that the corporate ladder and the corporate pyramid were self-serving. And I realized that it needed to be servant leadership and continuously still developing that when I come in the door, they're my customer. My team members are my customer. And even as we speak right now, Tim and I, we're in the middle of right now changing over to what you see on the right. If you take a watch with a face cover, you see the hands delivering time. But, when I was talking with one of my production coaches that runs my facility, I actually said, take that off, make it a skeleton watch, and start to look inside below the hands that deliver time. The subsets of gears are equal to the departments in your company. And some of the larger gears might be more like somebody that has more responsibility, including me as the head coach of our team. But the question is, what's the most important gear in that watch? It's the one that's missing. And it could be the littlest one, because everyone has equal importance to, and in a company, you're not delivering time, you're delivering your product, whether that's industrial or whether that's commercial in a product. So in starting to see them differently and realizing that that I'm there to serve them and they're of great value, is that why are we working 8 hours when we go to school for 6 hours? And we went to 4 6-hour lines. It makes up the 24-hour days, and then basically they work a 36-hour week. We found that going from 6 to 7 hours of in performing like they are is that we would lose 17% productivity. And I didn't see that as lost productivity or lost money. I saw that as fatigue. And if you want to have amazing quality, amazing quality, and amazing performance, you need to have the right amount of time until that person, is not worn out. The next thing was communication. So, we changed into 6 hours. On Fridays, we would bring in restaurants to bring the food in and have like a TED Talk, or I would have a personal talk, or one of our production coaches would build these little skateboards and they would paint them and we would go through cones through the shop. So fun is a very important part of what we do. You can do that very professionally in sports or in a performance place. But then I go, if this is my family, why are we charging them for food? So, we're with a company that has over 10,000 people that provide food into companies across the United States. And the person that I work with said, well, you're only one of 2 companies that doesn't charge your team members for food. And then we were doing safety to put, to learn how to operate the fire extinguisher and put out a fire in our facility. And it dawned on me that we were having that the next day, and I called my son and I said, Brandon, we need to go buy fire extinguishers for every one of those people in their homes. We need them to be able to save their families and save, their home, So it's a total, and there were a lot more than these things, but these are just some ideas of how when you value someone from the inside out and, that and you love them, like that it makes a difference in their life. Yeah. We're not here to make a living. We're here to make a difference.
Make a difference, absolutely. And so, again, I'm going to go back to this handout. You see it again on your screen, and I'm going to ask you to consider, where are you at? 4 areas, right? There's the tell, sell, coach, empower. This over here where the boss kind of controls everything, I call that the tell, sell, yell, right? Oftentimes we tell them what to do. They don't listen. We try to sell our idea. And if that doesn't work, we yell a little bit, right? And so that's the tell, sell, yell side. Now you start to move over. You see coach to empower. And you can see how much control each one has. Over here, the high end of controls on the boss side. Over onto the right, the coach is empowering decision making. We're pushing that power down so that the people below have the power. The ones that are closest to the decision can actually make the decision. So where are you at right now? And no matter where you're at on this, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or somewhere in between, you're always moving in one direction. It's not as important where you're at, but which way you're moving. Are you moving closer to the right? That's what we want to help you with. So we've looked boss to coach, seeing them differently, being able to coach them. We went through 3 of them. Now we're on this last one. the last shift. And that is from a tug-of-war culture to a win-win culture. The culture is that thing that is throughout the organization. It's what we live and breathe every day. It's what we feel. And so, there's a few things that help this transformation happen. When we're in a tug-of-war, it's really about self-interest. Everybody's out for themselves. That's the easiest way to understand it. They're out for themselves. But when we move to this win-win culture, they start to have a shared interest. Both start to win versus being out for themselves and being against each other. But in order to do that, we have to go from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. We have to be able to share and provide win-win agreements. And it takes a little bit of time to get there, but it's certainly worth it. Now, let's look at what you did, Mark, that helped them earn more and make them feel like they were winning every day as well.
Well, going back to that period in time where I was learning how to turn around the company and was going to hockey games, ice hockey games with my sons, I started to see that they were performing, not just going out on the ice and working. And I started to see that there's a hero inside of each person. And in many times we only see that in sports, but now if we can see that in any one of the careers that we perform instead of just work, you can see they're able to, in their data set inside of their device, they're able to monitor their skills, abilities, performance, and how they're doing on a week-to-week basis and improving the rate and our efficiencies in the company.
Yeah. And so what we want to do is we want to show you a quick video. I don't know how the sound is going to come through, but we're going to let you hear from some of the team members here at Hometown. And we're also going to provide links where you can get these videos when we're done. So it's about a minute and a half. We want you to hear from some of our team members.
It is a program that was developed to help our employees engage in their work better and also have a friendly competition. Each job has a rate, and that rate is equated by how many pieces you could make within an hour. If you're logged in for an hour and you meet the rate, then you make that rate. If you take half an hour, you're getting double the rate. But they can also see their pay rate in a real-time system, which incentivizes the whole process of work and makes it more fun.
Being able to see the rate and actually be able to improve the rate depending on how my production is actually fantastic, especially with having a family at home, to be able to bring more home based on how much work I do.
The visual learning system is amazing. It's really good to be able to see as you're working what you're making. You work harder, you work faster, it goes up. That's really good to see. You're in control of what you make. You give yourself a raise, basically. You come in, you work hard, and you're rewarded for that directly. You're not waiting around for somebody to notice, maybe I'll get a raise. You come in, you work hard, you get paid well, and you get rewarded.
So what we're seeing here is how they were able to earn more, but it created that real win-win.
Oh, yeah. Well, and what I said is you get more out of life by helping other people get what they want out of life. So what it was is we needed to make their goal be the primary goal. And when they're running like at 483% a rate, it's easy for me to know that we're running at they're running at $48 an hour, I'm at 483% a rate. So here's a quick guide. Basically in 2010, they were making $8 when I was paying them, but they were making $22 an hour at that point in their earnings, and their performance was 175%. Then so much of the calculation in a company is about how many sales dollars are they putting out. They moved that up 615%. That, of course, cut our labor cost in half, and then we were able to give them free hospitalization because they had dramatically cut costs. But the most significant thing that a lot of companies monitor is their either gross or net profitability. And we were below the norm during the financial crisis at -5, but we turned it around to being actually 14%, 1,890% improvement. And you'll see here when we go back to the SBDC chart that the profit sense actually measures the industry average, the 90-day in real time, and we were head and shoulders above at 13.56% not profitability against our industry.
Yeah, and the win-win concept, you talk about diametrics, right? You had to have a diametric mind or a mind that was completely different than the mind you had before.
To make that change, make that quantum leap.
Yeah, and so when we look at what the best companies are doing, I want to make this very easy for you. You can see GE, IBM, some of these companies actually measure their culture. And I'm going to make it real simple. You either have a win-lose culture, a lose-win culture, or a win-win culture. A win-lose culture creates internal competition. It's very short-term focus. We're driven really hard and fast, but the people maybe that are on our team feels like they're losing at times, even though we're moving really fast. In a lose-win culture, it's kind of opposite. We really become conformed to the demands of leadership, and they get really rigid. And sometimes even as managers, owners, leaders, whatever, we feel like we're losing because somehow we've lost control of what's gone on in the culture. But the one that we're focusing on now is that win-win culture, where you have the effective goal setting, achievement, growth, learning, teamwork, and collaboration. So mark a check on which do you feel like you have. Is that win-lose, lose-win, or win-win on your handout? And so we'll start to land the plane here, and we're going to talk about how once you develop that win-win culture, the win-win, you had a win-win mindset not only with the team members, but with your whole community.
Oh, yeah. And when you empower your team, to self-management, that sets you free to be able to look at working on tomorrow, today, or so you can be in the next space in technology and not out of space. Yeah. So this gave the chance to integrate with YSU, 3D sand printing, and what you're seeing is the ribbon cutting of EI, which is educational integration with the university in Hometown. And that got, when I started, to go on that path, then Governor Mike DeWine asked me to be on the state school board, and what you see here is more educational integration. Basically, the whole child revolves around the family, community partnerships, and in our case, business. So then we went and integrated with the students, in the K through 12th graders by exposing them to what we do and then letting them come in and learn and actually give tours to their friends in the factory. And this is total community engagement.
Yeah, so that's why I say the win-win spread. So now we're going to look at action steps that you can take. We reviewed all 4 transformations. We reviewed from a workplace to a performance center, so you could get a little snapshot of what that was. We reviewed that difference between an employee and industrial athletes. We reviewed the difference between bossing and having a boss mindset versus coaching. And then finally, we talked about that difference between a tug of war, which is either win-lose or lose-win, and a win-win culture. So on your handout, a couple questions. If you were to make a shift, which shift that you heard and thought about through this presentation would provide the most benefit to your team? Which shift? Write that down or make note. And number 2, what would be one specific thing you could do to get started? What's an action step in making that shift possible? And so, Mark, to close, why don't we tell them about the Global Investment Hub here in this very location we're sitting at today, where we're inviting anybody from Jamaica or other countries that might be watching and listening in.
So, yeah, Tim, we just finished the renovation, and probably in the next 60 days, it will be all completed. And what we're looking at with the Import-Export Department of the Youngstown State University, in conjunction with the Columbiana County Port Authority in Hometown, is actually to bring in 6 international companies, Global Investment Hub, somewhat around advanced manufacturing or additive manufacturing, and a little bit more tailored to oil and gas innovation, but it could be any industry, and they're going to give incentives for the first year, for 1 year of free rent and furnished office space. and then you can get a student intern at a very low rate.
Yep.
So please reach out.
Yep.
If that's something you'd like to look at.
Yeah, and so this is normally the time we would take questions and answers. And since we're not there with you in person, we still want you to connect with us. So you can either screenshot this, save it to your screen, but you can reach out to Mark with his email, or get on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me. There's my email. There's my LinkedIn. I've already heard from some of you. You can reach out and connect to a form and ask us any question on that third one, which you can also, look for the book. But we'll answer any question that you have. Or you can get onto Humtown's YouTube page, which you can see samples of the videos like we were just showing you a moment ago. So in closing, Mark, we want to thank them for being good listeners. We want to invite them into our space, and anything else we want to share as we're closing here.
Well, the next chance that we get to come to talk with you, we'd love to come. When I was there, it was one of my most positive international experiences I ever had by being in your country. And we appreciate that we can be here electronically, and we want to look how we can be better together.
Yeah, so long. God bless, and hopefully we can connect.